have my Thank you very much to all the committee members who presented and those who served but were not vocal tonight. Questions? Yes?
Yeah, Eric Cody. What will the other factors be that the school committee uses to make its decision? And what is the time frame for that decision?
Excellent question. The school committee has not discussed yet what the factors would be, but I'll give you my opinion as to where they'll fall. We'll be having discussions throughout the upcoming months. It's not going to be, let me back up for a second. Narragansett High School, Narragansett School Committee has invited this school committee to meet with them, so that's one factor. We will be obviously considering cost as a factor. We do not yet have a cost from Narragansett High School. We have a cost as per our current contract with NK, but we do not have a renegotiated rollover clause yet. So that cost is also not really determined. We had met with the North Kingstown School Committee to discuss the contract for the upcoming year, and had determined that we really need to wait until the new chart of accounts that has gone into effect plays out all the different changes, because the formula is based, formula will change because of the changes in the accounting system. The current formula is based on inside figures. I'm probably throwing out things that don't mean anything to you, but the formula will be changing, and it's too early yet to tell how it's going to have to be tweaked. So the two committees decided, well, we'll wait until a year has gone by in terms of the chart of accounts being in effect, so the end of this current year, to see how that plays out, and then talk about that. So we're not under any urgency right now. Were we going to consider a change for next year? We've already passed the deadline. Okay, it was a November 1 deadline. If we had wanted to send our freshmen to a different high school next year, so we have time. So we're going to, it's not going to be a rush to judgment. We have a lot of factors to consider. Politics, you know, we all are reading about things going on in NK. We all are keeping our eyes on the stability of the culture and how that's being affected. I mean, there are a lot of aspects to consider, and we don't have yet a set timeline on what we're doing. So I can't, if you were looking for, well, come visit us on February 20th, and no, it's going to play out slowly. Yes?
Two things. One is, one question that parents had, which wouldn't affect me, it sounds like from what you're saying, but I know a lot of people have the question that say the kids are going to NK as a freshman, and then you make a decision to change schools. What happens to those kids that are already in NK? And second of all, I haven't spoken to any parent that would be happy with making that change, and maybe it's just the people I've talked to, maybe other people feel that way, but I feel a lot of people have attended this meeting because they're not happy with the thought of changing. So, and like I said, I may be wrong, but everybody I've spoken to certainly feels that way.
To answer your first question, under the current contract language, we would move the freshmen, and the other three classes would stay through graduation. And I don't foresee any circumstances under which we would want to take a child out of the high school that they were attending. And thank you for your input on your preferences, and that's certainly that's also an aspect that we'll be considering.
One of the things that I'll be considering is your input, and coming to meetings or writing notes, emails, and so forth. That's what I'm most concerned about. The other practical reason is, you know, in consideration of transportation costs. It's farther to go to Narragansett than it is to North Kingstown. I'd also like just to take an opportunity, but I don't want to diminish, your input is very important to this decision. But I want to take this opportunity to thank the High School Review Committee for a fabulous report in terms of information is great. There is so much information here to go through. Thank you so much, because that's a great place to start. And then, your input, all the other practical applications and reasons are the next step.
One thing that sticks out to me is this incidence of suspension on the factors affecting school environment. Do you think that's kind of a high ratio, 42.1 per 100 students? Is that what I'm reading there?
You looking at Narragansett?
Narragansett compared to 13.5 per 100?
Yeah, I wrote that down.
So there's Yeah, you know, these are all factors that should we, you know, find that to be a pivotal reason when we're doing our decision making. We would have to look much harder at what does a suspension actually mean. I teach in a high school that has a lot of suspensions, but probably less than most high schools because we have an in-house suspension. It wouldn't show up on the suspension statistics. So, I mean, you have to look at.
In-school suspensions are in here too.
Okay. Never mind.
That's 42% the way I see it.
No.
That one stuck right out of me too.
100?
I understand, and it seems to be very high.
Incidents.
Those are the incidents, and I just did the math, I was sitting up here because I have it right here, but I saw the same thing, I said, that sort of sticks out. It turns out that the average suspension, whether in-house or not, is 3.6 days. And so, it's still a very high percentage, but when you get right down to it, it's sort of like the same amount of time a suspension takes place is the same. The percentage is really high though.
I would think with a smaller high school, it would be much less.
That's one thing that we're going to look into.
That could be just one or two kids. It becomes something else, right? It's not the environment, you know, it's someone that just keeps showing off. You want to sell low, it's costing.
It could also be something like the standards for getting suspended are much lower at one place than another place. So there are a variety of factors that might explain.
Yes.
Also, I just wanted to point out, I noticed on the athletics, my son's a freshman, and he did play freshman football, which is at NK, and the budget was cut from the state, and the community became looser cooperating the money. So that, I think, would also be something, is the community willing to support the school? And clearly, I mean, in my small experience there, they were more than happy to raise the funds and support that program for those kids. And there were at least 8 kids from Jamestown on that program.
Yes.
I wanted to thank the committee too. I mean, this is a great report. I just had a couple questions. One was on the page with guidance. It said that from the information provided, there are no pronounced differences in the colleges attended by graduates from both high schools. I wonder if you could comment on that a bit, because given the difference in the AP scores and given the difference in the SAT scores, I find that hard to believe.
What we found were, there was a high majority of students that attended the University of Rhode Island at both schools, and it applied. We had the applicant, right. And so, and there wasn't a lot of disparity. There were Ivy Leagues, there may be a few more Ivy Leagues at North Queenstown High School. Again, we talked about that. That's hard to know the reason why. We can't. That's a.
Oh, you got good information on that?
Yeah. We actually had from SAT the listing of places where they applied, yes.
Where the scores were set.
Where the scores were
That's really
set.
what the report was.
So we're assuming they applied to those schools.
Okay.
For 3 years, where the scores were set.
Where they applied, not where they got in.
North Kingstown has a list that says where every graduating
More
senior is
seniors get
attending.
download lists for both schools, so in terms of actual attendance.
But even looking
But
at
looking
where
at
they
where
went,
they
and we
sent.
did look at that, it wasn't pronounced differences.
So another thing I thought, I got the impression just from the dropout rates and from the kneecap scores and